Hi traders, thanks for stopping in. Please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell for the next course after this one. Today's course is going to be on defining price levels. So let's go to the charts and get started. This is a yearly chart of Rocket Lab. Up here is the most recent high of 99.58. So we'll get our, actually we'll use this drawing tool, which is our quadrant lines, and we'll break it down with the quadrant lines, and then I'll show you how to do it without quadrant lines. So our low down here, our most recent, our yearly low that we're going to use is this move from here, because this came back, checked in with our moving averages, our 200 day, and then took off again. So we want to track this move, because this move is the important move to us. All this back here, we can't do anything about that. But this move here, we're still within this move. So this was the move that we're going to concentrate on. So we'll take our quadrant lines, we'll put it down there, and we'll come across and go up here to the top of that move there. So our move is, okay, so we'll look at it and we'll say the low of this one is 37.57. We get that number if we look up here, around across here. All right, let's see my arrow up here. Okay, you're gonna see this high, low, close, open. All right, so if you keep an eye on that, when I highlight this area down here, all right, it's gonna give us our open, our high, our low, and our close. So the low of that bar was 37.57. So we're going to take that and we're going to stick it in our quadrant line square right here. Alright, so over here, 37.57. And then of course we know our high is 99.58. So we'll change that from 100 to 99.58. Okay. Alright, so we have our high and our low of this particular move that happened from looks like about November of 2025 till today, right? So we're going to look at that. We'll lock it in. First we're going to change the color because blue makes it a little bit easier to see, I believe, in my opinion. So let's change it. And so now we have our quadrant lines in. So now if you look at this, if you look at this movement from top to bottom in our quadrant lines, it pretty much breaks up that move pretty evenly. Even our 50% point is about the same. Okay? So now we know that this move, that everything that came into this move to push it all the way up here, this is our halfway point. And this is what we're going to call our pivot area. This halfway point is going to be our pivot area. And everything in between is just going to be upper resistance and lower resistance. Now, the main portion of this is the upper resistance. Usually breaks at about 25%. Once we get above 25% and hold, then most likely we're going to push through and continue higher. Same thing on the sell side. Once we get below 75%, most likely we're going to push down to the lower side. Now another bigger factor is that if we get through these moving averages and start heading down, the likelihood that the 200s push us lower become greater. And the same thing is true that the likelihood, as long as we're on top of them, the likelihood of these 200s will push us higher. As you can see here, where they held as support and pushed the stock higher. So what we know at this point is that we have our pivot area and we have our upper and our lower resistance areas. Now, our main concern is what happens in between those areas, because right now we're just traveling between those areas. We haven't quite decided what direction we're going to head in the market on this particular stock. And this is a stock, this one is Rocket Lab. All right, the ticker is RKLB, Romeo Kilo Lima Bravo. Okay, Rocket Lab. Now, another way of doing this, if you don't have a quadrant lines on your chart, is like this. Let's remove our quadrant lines. So we know we have our high, right? Oops, let me change that to our price level. Okay, so we know we have our high. We know we have our low, and price got rejected here, right? And then again, price got rejected here. So now if we look at this, again gives us our pivot line, basically our pivot area, our upper band and our lower band. Right now we're still traveling between here and here, so we can really expand this to here, and this one to here. And that'll give us a bigger range to travel in. Anything outside, most likely is going to head lower. Anything outside, most likely going to head higher. So now we know we're trading within this range. This is where we're going to buy low, and this is where we're going to sell high. If we break out, so basically, when you're buying low and selling high within this band, let's make that a different color so it'll be easier to see. Or easier to recognize. Alright, so this is our pivot zone. So our pivot zone, while we're trading back and forth within this zone, not picking a direction, this is where a lot of traders talk about volatility, or talk about not having any volume, and not having any the market doesn't have a direction. Well, the market has a direction, it just doesn't have a big enough direction for them to understand which way the market's headed. And so, and I think that's what they're trying to convey, is that they don't know what direction the market is heading. They know the market's going to the right, but they just don't know if it's going to go up to the right or go down to the right. And so they're just reacting to the move. Now we know that our real zone is right in here in the middle of these two lines, which was depicted by our quadrant lines. And you just, by looking at it, you can see that it's just been respecting this area as it was up here chopping around. It's respecting down through here. So you really could take this right now and line this right here and say, okay, there's another. Basically, really you should separate, or just kind of pretty much just set in the middle of the two. So somewhere like that. Okay. So that's really your pivot area. And once you break out of that, then you need to confirmation to hit higher, break through there, and you know you're going to go higher. Same thing this way. You come down, you break through here, get confirmation, and then head lower. So that's our pivot area there. As you can see, we just keep swinging back and forth through it. And even this move here to here, 50% of that move. So this pivot area is strong, and we keep going to it, right? We went up to it here, pulled back, went up through it, 50%. came back, tested that 50%, went higher. Came back down, bouncing around 50%, 50%, 50%, 50%, went through, went back, retested 50%, coming back down lower. So that is another way of reading your market movement. And this is on Rocket Lab, so we can take this and let's go look at something else. So now here's a chart on the SPY. Now the SPY hasn't given us the SPY is not as clear as Rocket Lab, but it has given us a pivot area. Or I should say a zone. It's a little bigger zone. It's a bigger zone than Rocket Lab because the SPY moves a lot more than Rocket Lab. And that's another thing you have to understand. Price discovery. Another thing you have to understand is that price, depending on the stock, the price may move a lot more than any other stock that you're looking at. So you have to take that into factor as well when you're setting up your zones. Because some zones are not going to look the same as other zones. Some zones may be a lot clearer and easier to see. And other zones are more confusing based on all the travel that the stock does. Because how much travel a stock can do in a day. Okay, so understanding that and realizing that the stock may move depending on the stock you're looking at. It may move more than your average stock, and so the pivot zones are going to be a little bit wider or a little bit are not going to look as clean as they do on some other charts. So that's all I have on defining price levels. Basically, you're going to open your chart up, you're going to move out to about a year, and you're going to find the high, find the low, and then break it up into quarters. And once you get those quarters, those are your levels. Once you find where it's switching in the middle, that's your pivot zone. And that's that. Then we work on the... So that's how we define our price levels. So next thing we're going to do is define where we're going to get into the trade. So that's going to be our price execution. So like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and as always, be careful out there. These markets are crazy.